Hey, my name is Derek. Welcome back to the Aquanut Podcast. And today I have Fred here. And Fred, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Fred Schweer with PoolRx. I head up the sales for our organization. We've been in business since 1994. I've been with the company going on 10 years. So I get the privilege of traveling around the country and teaching people about the benefits of this great product and helping support the brand. And it's been a great 10 years so far. I'm looking forward to a bunch more.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is, we're at the Orlando Everything Under the Sun show. Isn't this like the third show that I've seen you at this year?
I think so. I think this is my sixth one in the last 45 days. So I've been on the road. January, February, March are pretty busy for people in the business.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that we just take this time off and go sit on the beach in South Florida or something. That
Yeah, couldn't be farther from the truth.
not the truth. What do you like to do for fun, Fred?
I love to. I have two young boys at home, and my wife, and we love everything sports related. My boys play a lot of sports, so every season there's something going on, and I really love coaching them and going to their games and that kind of stuff. So, when I'm not working PoolRx and having fun teaching people about it, I'm home with the family and coaching the kids and watching them grow. So that's pretty much a pretty generic answer, but it's the truth.
No, that's perfect. Do you have a favorite sport?
I grew up playing all of them, but it's really whatever the kids are playing. We're usually a football, basketball, baseball family, so whatever season it is, we have something to do. So, but yeah, I was a football player way back in the day, so that's my number one. But I wish I was a basketball player, and if I could have hit a curveball, I may have been a baseball player, but it didn't happen.
So no concussions from...
Oh, I'm sure. That was, it was back in the late 80s, early 90s, so I'm sure I had a few, absolutely.
It's one of the big things with football right now. Everybody's talking about concussions.
They've come so far with training and how to tackle properly. So it's really come a long way as far as how to teach tackling and hitting, and they keep a good eye on how much contact these kids are having every day, and they're really teaching fundamentals, which are critical to play the game properly, not get hurt. So don't be afraid of football, folks. It's a great game.
Right. So you rep PoolRx. Go over a little bit about the product, and then we'll talk a little bit about chemistry. I think we're going to keep this particular podcast kind of focused on chemistry.
So PoolRx is a 6-month algaecide, or EPA registered federally and by every state. And it's not just an algaecide, but there's a few things that make us unique. Our mineral formulation, number one, is unique to other products on the market. We are using copper sulfate pentahydrate. There's some zinc in the product. There's some other proprietary minerals. So our mineral formulation is unique. The next thing that sets us apart is our chelation. We actually chelate the minerals, which it's in general terms, it protects them at a molecular level, which protects against any kind of fallout or staining issues that are associated with copper. Over the years, people have been using copper since the beginning of time to keep water potable and algae-free and safe. And the big issue over the years has been the inability to chelate it properly so it doesn't fall out and stain your pool. We've mastered that, and the unique chelation is super strong. It's, like I said, bonded at a molecular level and sort of protects it, and that also sets us apart. It's actually so chelated that you can't even test for it accurately in the water with any kind of typical reagent test kits, and that's a good thing because of the safety of it. But it becomes a bit of a challenge when you are saying, well, how do I know when to add more mineral to the water? And I'll hit on that later maybe in our discussion. But the third thing that sets us apart is this unit has an alloy cylinder in it. It's a hollow alloy cylinder, and it's packed with the mineral formulation. And the minerals, when you put this in the pump basket or the skimmer, the minerals dissolve out of this unit completely and immediately, and they form a residual throughout the entire body of water. And what the minerals do is they're doing the act of killing and preventing of algae. And then as the water flows back over this alloy, there's a reaction with our minerals in the water and this particular alloy that keep those minerals active for up to 6 months. So it's as simple as picking the right size unit based on the gallons of the pool. You know, the blue unit handles 7,500 to 20,000 gallons. The black unit handles 20 to 30,000 gallons. And starting with a clean filter, you just drop it in the pump basket or the skimmer and make sure you have at least 3 or 4 hours of pump run time on the pump after you put it in, so those minerals can dissolve into the water. And that's it. You set it and forget it. I mean, it's PoolRx and a low residual of chlorine, and that's all you really need. One note about this, it's really a chemical saving story, and the reason for that is the minerals are preventing even the microalgae from growing in the water. And even in a clear pool, there is algae that consumes your chlorine. So there's microalgae in the water you can't even see yet. And with PoolRx, we're preventing even the microalgae from growing. And so by doing that, it's freeing up that chlorine to be more available that would have been consumed by the algae. So you're going to notice when using PoolRx that you're going to use about 50% less chlorine. We only need 0.5 parts per million, 0.5 to 1 part per million of free chlorine for this to work as advertised. And what you'll find is you'll be able to, if you want to keep your pool at 3 parts per million or 2 or 3 parts per million for the week, and then you come back and you add some more chlorine to it, you'll be able to do that, but you'll also find that it's going to take you less chlorine to reach that desired part per million. If you want to keep your chlorine level higher, you can do that. It's not going to affect our product, but you're going to notice it's going to take you less chlorine to reach your part per million you want to keep because it's just more available in the water. So that's a big benefit. The other huge benefit is, phosphates, right? Phosphates are everywhere. They're coming from source water. They're coming through, from stuff that's blowing into your pool, coming from your soaps and your bathing suits and those kind of things. So it's a never-ending battle. And with us, phosphates. The story with phosphates is you're trying to take phosphates out of the water to starve the algae. Phosphates are food for algae. What people don't know, Derek, is that phosphates do not consume chlorine in the water. What consumes the chlorine is that microalgae that the phosphates feed. So with PoolRx, again, we are preventing all types of algae, so you don't have to worry about phosphates in the water. And that's a huge savings. So when it comes to service professionals or homeowners that are trying to reduce their chemical demands and swim in less chemicals and have an easier experience, with PoolRx, you're not having to use a phosphate remover because if there's no algae, it doesn't matter how much food's in the water. You're reducing your chlorine demand by about 50%. Again, there's no need for clarifiers because the chlorine is now much more active and available in the water. And there's actually no need for other algaecides because this is your algaecide. So it's a major chemical saving story. It's super simple to use, and it works. We're a single product company. We've been in business since 1994, and it's an exciting product, and it's one of those things that I love to talk about and teach people about and bring to their attention that there's an easier, more cost-effective way to do things.
You touched on a couple of things that I would like to hit on. Number one is the parts per million of chlorine.
Yeah.
I personally, nothing against you or anybody else in the industry, I hate when people say you can keep your chlorine at 0.5.
No, that's not what I meant to say. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the minimum free chlorine is 0.5. I'm not saying start your pool there.
Right.
Right.
It's just my issue with it is it's so hard to test for 0.5.
Sure.
So
yeah.
So I always say 0.1 because that's kind of where my test kit starts.
Or 1. Yeah.
I'm sorry, not 0.1.
Yeah.
I'll have to edit that out. 1 part per million because I don't even know how you would test for 0.1.
Yeah.
There's not a test kit out there. Well, maybe.
Maybe like in food grade or something.
Tap water has 1 part per million all the way up to 2.5 parts per million. I have tested because we test tap water on a constant basis. because tap water or fill water, as it's called, or source water, whatever you want, it's the stuff that comes out of the hose.
Yeah.
So if
so to your point, when I say 0.5 to 1 part per million, that's the minimum that we need to have. I would not recommend starting your pool at 0.5 parts per million because obviously the chlorine is going to be consumed, right? So I'm more talking on the end of the week concept, right? Where you're like, hey, I'm going there once a week and I'm adding chlorine to the pool, I'm balancing the chemistry, or you're a homeowner and you do it on the weekend or whatever. So yeah, you're going to start it at a higher level and it's going to get used up over time. So I didn't mean to say, hey, yeah, you can just be at 0.5. There's no such thing as a chlorine-free pool, number one, and you definitely for this to work as advertised, we want 0.5 parts per million. Now, keep in mind with this is that even at 0 chlorine in the water, you are 0, that you can even read on your test, which is below, that 0.5 level or 1, you're still going to notice clarity. And even if you go to 0 chlorine with PoolRx in the water, eventually over time, several days, it'll start getting cloudy, right? There's no chlorine in the water, but you're never going to have algae. So that's another great benefit. So if you go, if you go away for the weekend, or if you forget to put chlorine in the water, you're still going to maintain clarity, and you're not going to ever have that algae bloom. So you're not playing that roller coaster ride, over the summer where you have a storm or you have a big party, or you forget to put it in, or you leave for the weekend. Those are also benefits to have this in the water, kind of as your baseline or like your insurance policy. But I'm sorry if I misspoke or misled you. That say
you didn't.
Okay.
You didn't.
Okay. All right.
Because everybody that has a chlorine aid, let's just call it that. Everybody that has a chlorine aid, and I'm talking about whether it is the UV systems, the ozone systems, or the ionizers, which is essentially what this is without the electrical component, correct? Or
yes and no.
am I
Yeah.
totally
So
wrong?
you're. It's along the same lines. Ionizers are feeding typically copper and silver into the water, but it's not chelated, and that becomes a problem because it's very easy to overdose and put too much copper or silver into the water, and then you're getting to a saturation point. You shock your pool and you see this purple come out on the surface, and it's just from that those ionizers are feeding in non-chelated product, which becomes more sensitive, and it's also harder to kind of maintain and balance because you don't know what the demand is. So sometimes it's underused, sometimes it's overused. Where with PoolRx, it's different. We're using safe to use chelated minerals, and we're putting the right amount in at the right time. Again, it goes by gallons, right? So there's a nice range of sizing, and if you have a pool that's larger than 20,000, you can actually add additional booster minerals, and we can talk about that later. But so we can support any size body of water. So again, with us, it's putting the right amount in at the right time, and then over time, the minerals get used up. So you never get to a saturation point. People are like, well, people have been using this since 1994 every year, and there's no problem. Like that's correct, because the minerals get used up and filtered out. And so when you clean your filter every 6 months, or even less than that if you're doing it, the minerals are leaving the water. So you never get to that saturation point again, so we're putting the right amount in at the right time, and we never get to that overdose situation, which is something where the ionizers are. You really have to be on top of that and really dial that in so you don't have that issue.
To let everybody know, whenever Fred was talking about cleaning your filters every 6 months, he's talking about cartridge filters,
Right.
sand filters, which are big in my area.
Yeah.
You need to backwash them every week, whether you think you need to or not. You can't always trust the pressure gauge.
Yeah.
And then DE filters. Some people say you can go 6 months without backwashing a DE filter.
No. Backwashing, no. Backwashing sand and DE, when you have to do it, you have to do it, right?
Right.
On the initial install of this, one of the important notes is that you want to start with a clean filter. And the reason for that is that it's a granular mineral. And I can actually show you inside of these units, you can't really see, but inside of this unit is this granular mineral. And this granular has to dissolve through the filter into solution in the water. And so if your filter's dirty, it's going to get caught up on that dirty filter, and you're not going to get enough mineral in the water. And so if you don't get enough mineral in the water, it won't hit that chemistry tipping point that we need to have. So that's why it's important to start with a clean filter before you put this in. And then the other note would be, I would, if you have a sand filter or DE, I would skip a backwash cycle. Wait 2 weeks before you backwash, and that's just so every little bit can get into the water, especially if your pump run times aren't very long. If you're running this thing on a variable speed and it's running, practically all day, then it's going to dissolve through and push through into the water to be fine. But I would recommend skipping that backwash cycle. Don't clean your filter for 2 weeks after you put this in, just so you can get all that mineral into the water.
Yeah, and if you do not follow what Fred is saying here, you start out with a dirty filter, and then a couple of days later you clean the filter, you run the risk of throwing money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the kind of a beginner mistake, and that's when people call us up and say this didn't work, or this didn't last as long as it's supposed to. And that's typically from dirty filter, minerals, not enough mineral in the water, right? And or they notice the filter pressure goes up. I mean, again, the filter pressure is going to go up for in the first 24 hours. You're going to notice a little bump in filter pressure because the minerals are dissolving through. Don't fret; it's going to dissolve through. It'll come back down. But if you backwash right after you put this in, you're losing the mineral down the drain, and that's what you paid for.
Right.
So.
Now, you mentioned several times the word chelation, and
Yes.
you explained it, but I want to go into more depth of what that word means. And across all chemicals in the pool. So what is the Looney Tunes version of what the word chelation means?
The best way that I can describe it is that the chelation is actually protecting the mineral from adverse reactions with other chemicals or adverse reactions with high or low pH. It keeps it in solution in the water. It helps it stay in solution in the water. And some chelation wears off over time, and people have to add more to it. With our product, it does not. So our chelation is strong enough that for the life of the mineral, it will never break down, so to speak. So yeah, the chelation is important for things to play well together. And to be safe, and so you're not going to push the mineral out of the water from high pH. For a salt system people out there, this is a great reason to have PoolRx with a salt pool. And we can maybe talk about that later, but salt systems are always it's creating a pH of 13 coming off the salt cell, and that's why you're always rising your pH is always rising in a salt pool, and that's again where people wouldn't be using a copper product in those pools because the high pH pushes that copper out of the water. Again, with our chelation, it doesn't have an issue with that, so very safe in those salt pool environments. And even in commercial applications where people are shocking the hell out of the pool and raising their chlorine to 10 or 20 parts per million, you're not going to knock this out of the water or break it down, so to speak, where the mineral becomes unstable. So the chelation is critical to our success, and that's one of the things we're pretty proud of. But again, back to it is that it's so strong that you can't even test for it accurately. So you take your water to a retail store, and they do a water test for you, and they say, hey, can you test for copper? And if you have just put PoolRx in there, you're not going to get an accurate or consistent test. So what that means is, if you think you have copper in your water from well water, old copper plumbing that's been leaching copper into the water, old copper heat exchange that's leaching copper into the water, number one, you probably don't have algae because you have a high copper content in your water. But number two is you're going to want to test for that first before using PoolRx, because once you put PoolRx in for 6 months, your test reading is not going to be accurate. So again, if you do have copper in your water, 0.02 parts per million or less, you're safe to use PoolRx, which is the lowest level on the test strip or the spin lab or the liquid reagent or the, whatever you're testing for it. And if you're above 0.02, we would recommend addressing that issue first. The product we recommend is a product called See You Later by Periodic Products. It's a polymer bag that physically drops into your skimmer and physically pulls metal out of the water. As the water flows over it, it catches onto that polymer. It pulls out iron, pulls out copper, manganese, silver, all sorts of stuff. But typically, iron and copper are the most common ones they're trying to pull out. So we would recommend, if you have trace metals in your water, to use the See You Later first before using PoolRx. That's the only product that can actually pull our mineral out of the water.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you next. So what if, because, in my area, not everybody, but there's a lot of people that are on well water, and it has a bunch of minerals in it.
Right.
And what people will do is, because the minerals, especially like iron, whatnot, they're not really in that... they're not really in the water. They're kind of outside of the water. What am I trying to say here? They're outside of the water molecule.
Okay.
So when people go to shock, they're just,
brown
hey,
staining.
It's worse than that.
Yeah.
So it's like they fill their pool up and they're like, I need to get chlorine in this pool. So they go ahead and shock it. The whole pool will turn green. Just like that, because they've oxidized that
the
metal.
trace metals, yeah.
So to make sure that people don't waste money on your product or other products like it, they should not use a metal remover, or should use it prior to?
Absolutely. Use so if test your source water. If you have trace metals, especially iron or copper, we recommend dealing with that. And there's a lot of products on the market that sequester the metal and try to filter it out. We recommend a little bit different product, which is the See You Later product by Periodic Products, the polymer. And it's because it physically pulls it out of the water. So you're starting from zero. It can take 0.5 parts up to 4 parts per million of whatever metal is in that water. It physically takes it out. So it's not like a Band-Aid where you're sequestering it, holding it in solution, and trying to get it out of the water. It's physically taking it out through this polymer. So yeah, iron is very sensitive to oxidation. And again, with PoolRx, we are making that chlorine so much more active and available. And so what that means is, the chlorine is now, when it goes in the water, it's like supercharged, like super active. And so that's where you're seeing, if you have high iron content, you're seeing that iron staining, that brown staining, little spots of brown. That's from the iron in the water. So test for trace minerals, deal with those first, and then go ahead and use the PoolRx is what I would recommend. When it comes to iron, it's super sensitive. So when you're using this and you do have iron, either deal with it first, or don't super shock your pool like you're used to doing before PoolRx. Start with a lower chlorine residual, and gradually build it up. Don't just, pound it and all of a sudden, you're wondering why. You'll know why. So but again, it's not something to be too nervous of. With or without PoolRx, you should be testing for metals at least once or twice a year, just to kind of see where you're at. It's a very inexpensive, easy to do test. So we would recommend that with or without. That's kind of normal pool maintenance procedures is what we would recommend.
Yeah. We test for metals every time someone comes into my retail store, and we can only test for water or for metals with our test for metals that are not in the solution. Right. So with your product, it's going to make sure that there's no algae in the water, and you said that the water will be clear. So does clear water mean it's safe?
No. Clear water doesn't mean it's safe, but what we do is we are making a lower amount of chlorine be available so the water can be safe. So, 0.5 parts per million with PoolRx in the water is really equal to like 3 parts per million without PoolRx in the water. And so that is definitely a safety measure. The chlorine is more available to eliminate the bacteria, viruses, other contaminants, but what we're really doing is we're preventing all types of algae, so it takes the pressure off the chlorine, and the chlorine can now be more available to really clarify the water and to keep it safe from those other contaminants. So it's much safer with PoolRx in the water than without, for sure. But no, just clear water doesn't mean it's safe. Yes, I mean, clear tap water, we consider it safe because, there are, regulations on what they are allowed to allow us to drink. But in pool water, contaminants are coming from all sorts of places. And so, yeah, you definitely still need chlorine in the water. And that also goes, to in high cyanuric pools, which we haven't really touched on. And in your market, not so much because you get so much rain. So cyanuric isn't really a problem typically.
Oh, it is.
Well, if you're using tablets all day long and you're using dichlor all day long, then yeah, you're going to raise your cyanuric, right? Those products are 50 to 58% cyanuric acid.
Right.
So the more you're using tablet chlorine, which we highly recommend, great product, but you just got to keep an eye on the cyanuric level, and dichlor as well. But again, those are so high in cyanuric that as service guys know, the higher the cyanuric goes in the water, the slower the chlorine is killing anything. So what ends up happening is you have the algae and bacteria is growing faster than the chlorine kills it when your cyanuric is rising, well above 100 parts per million. So that's again where PoolRx is critical and very successful. And when people say I have a problem pool, I'm going to put PoolRx in my problem pool. Typically, a problem pool is because they have such a high cyanuric level that the chlorine is not fast. It doesn't kill fast enough. The oxidation reduction potential, the ORP, is reduced in the water because the cyanuric slows that down. And that's again where we come to the rescue because we're taking algae out of the equation. So that even that slow-acting chlorine in the water is now more available to really keep that water, safer than it would be without it. Mm-hmm. So again, there are limits to cyanuric as well. I'm going to touch on this. At 100 parts per million, the general rule is when your cyanuric level is at 100 parts per million, your alkalinity reading is 1/3 lower than the test is reading. And in your stores, you do a calculated alkalinity or an adjusted alkalinity test. So when you're giving them an alkalinity test, you're giving them the adjusted score, which is important because the higher the cyanuric goes, the potential more your water's out of balance. What I mean by that is if your cyanuric's at 250 parts per million and your alkalinity is reading at 90 and your pH is at 7.8, you're like, oh, I'm probably okay. But really, if you haven't adjusted, you're doing the calculation, your alkalinity is really at 60, not at 90. It's 1/3 lower than that. That's at 60. And so if your alkalinity is at 60 and your pH is at 7.8, your water is considered out of balance. And whatever's in excess in the water, in this case cyanuric acid, that is much more susceptible to coming out of solution because of the imbalanced water. So water wants to keep itself in balance, and whatever is in excess, when it gets out of balance, it will come out. And that cyanuric acid comes out and it can coagulate or attach to our mineral, and it turns into what's called copper cyanurate. And copper cyanurate is this purple dust that you see. I mean, if you've ever seen it before, it's the cyanuric acid that literally comes out of solution, and you can brush it up. You'll see it on the steps. It's just this purple dust, and it won't go away. You'll brush it, and it'll settle back down, and it won't go away. And the only way it goes away is if you dilute the water, reduce your cyanuric number, and adjust your alkalinity up to get your water back in balance, and it will literally dissolve back into the water. If it stays there long enough, it'll stick to your scale, and it'll be more of a pain in the butt to deal with. But super avoidable. Again, high cyanuric pools with 300 parts per million and PoolRx, no problem, as long as you're adjusting alkalinity up when necessary, if needed. So just that's one note. It happens, 1 in 1,000 times. But, for folks that are listening to this podcast and watching this podcast, I always like to give them, hey, you can't fall asleep on your chemistry. People fall asleep. They say, I just put PoolRx in there and, I use my tabs and my dichlor, and I'm good to go. Well, over time, if that cyanuric is out of control and you're out of balance, there is limits to chemistry. So I always like to preface that.
You mean I just can't keep my pool nice and clear and don't test for chemicals ever, and just as long as it's clear, it's good to go?
No, sir.
So you're talking about a CYA, or cyanuric acid, conditioner, stabilizer.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that particular chemical has like 20 different names. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
You're talking about 300. I can't even test with my test kit above 150. And
So that's great. That's great. I mean, at 150, I'm not too worried about it. But I mean, in different parts of the country, you'd be surprised, especially with the droughts in California, and the people that don't want to change their water or don't get enough rain. There's some crazy numbers out there. So again, it's not something to be concerned about. It's just to be aware of it. At 150 all day long, even when your water's out of balance, you're going to be fine. When you start getting well above those numbers,
well, you'll be fine with this
PoolRx.
This product. You
Yes.
still need to make sure that your chlorine inside, and CYA is something that has been a very hot and contested subject matter in our industry. There are people that are saying some pretty ridiculous things right now with CYA, and it's mostly, to be honest with you, scientists that are in a lab that have controlled, what is the word
experiments.
that I'm trying to use? Controlled. So like everything is controlled. Well, as you know, and most homeowners know, in your backyard, that's not a controlled type of deal. You've got rain, as you mentioned, you've got leaves falling in the pool, branches falling in the pool, and you also have the absolute worst thing that you can do for a pool: put people in it. Some people call it swimming pools. I stopped doing that. It's just a pool because a lot of people have them just for aesthetic purposes, and they're great for looking at, sitting in the back.
No, they're great too. Come on, man. You sound a little critical there.
No,
come on.
No, I get critical of scientists that have no experience in the field, and they're just doing experiments in a lab, and they don't have other stuff. Whereas you and me, we have both been out in the field and actually seen this product work. And for those of you that are listening, watching this, I actually use the black PoolRx for my problem pools, especially pools that have a particular type of really, really horrible skimmer system. I'm not going to mention the name of it, but it's a garbage skimmer. And basically what this particular product does, not your product, but this skimmer, is it turns an in-ground pool that is supposed to have good circulation, and it basically turns it into an above-ground pool where you have one point that's going back to the filter and one point that's going back into the pool. And I've got a 40,000-gallon pool that has one of these things on it. It has no other returns. It doesn't have a main drain. So the circulation on this pool is absolutely horrid. So we have to use the black PoolRx on that.
Yeah.
And we have to, because it doesn't matter how much chlorine that we put in the pool or how well balanced it is. We would come back the next week and it would inevitably have something in it. Now, they've got dogs that swim in the pool, and they've got kids and whatnot, and all of that's fine. I don't want to say, hey, don't swim in your pool. But as humans get in the pool, and dogs, we're going to bring stuff with us due to fecal matter and urine and whatnot that is just on our body. Doesn't matter how well you cleanse. It's going to come into the pool, and that's what you need chlorine for, is to get rid of the stuff that you cannot see. Things like Giardia, hope I said that right.
Yeah, close enough.
And crypto, those are big things. Yeah. Those come from things like fecal matter, and I know that's a real disgusting topic. Everybody, hey, I don't want poop in my pool, but it happens.
And again, that's also when you're talking about low circulation. the minerals, our minerals, once they dissolve into solution, they're everywhere that the water is. And, even in poor circulation environments, they're everywhere, which is part of the reason they're so effective. And it also gives you that extra layer of support. So, and that's exactly what that pool obviously needs. But yeah, you said that my problem pools, and look, folks, try this. If you haven't tried this, put this, in your toughest pool, and it will make you a believer. But once you realize it works in your toughest pool, man, how could this do in my best pool? And again, if the minerals are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is preventing algae and freeing up chlorine, now you're going to be able to swim in less chemicals, in a pool that's already in good shape, but you're going to be able to reduce your chlorine demand even further. And you're not going to have to use those other specialty chemicals, which is, again, better. The less you put in your water, the better off you are. The longer that water lasts, and the better it is for you. So become a believer in your problem pools, but once that light bulb goes on, then it's, man, this is really an every pool product.
So I am actually a proponent of PoolRx. People think that because I have a retail store, that PoolRx is something that I wouldn't want people to know about, and that is absolutely not true. I carry PoolRx in my retail store. I sell the product in my retail store because I want people to be able to use the product, especially on the problem pools. Most above ground pools, and I have an above ground pools, I'm not picking on them, but historically they have very poor circulation.
Yeah.
So when you put a product like this, it's going to help you out as far as keeping the algae out. And like I said, I use this product, I sell this product, and it's not one of those things where, I'm going to say, hey, don't use this product because I have a retail store and it's going to kind of hurt my chemical sales. I want people, and that's the whole reason why I'm doing this podcast, is the whole reason why I have the largest pool and spa Facebook group specifically geared towards pool owners, is because I want people to know the truth.
Yeah.
And the truth is that you have to test your water on a regular basis. During the summer, we tell people to test every single week. During the winter time, because if you're in my area, the South Carolina area, or further south, you should not turn your pump and filter off. You can cover the pool if you want to. You should not turn your pump and filter off, because we're not going to get into this, but cold water is actually more aggressive and harder on the pool surface than warm water is. So I want people to know the truth. And the truth is that you need to keep your water clear. You need to keep it safe. Because if you get people in that pool, and what I have happen, people will come into my retail store and they haven't tested their water for 6 months. Now their grandchildren have rashes all over their body, and they're coming to me going, what happened? Well, you didn't test your water for 6 months. That's what happened.
Sure.
But the water's clear. Well, if you have a pH of 2, of course the water's going to be clear, because that's acid. And I don't care what it is. Nothing wants to live in acid, and it's algae. No matter what kind of algae it is a plant, except for black algae, which is actually more in the mold family. Going back to this product, and you mentioned all types of algae. Black algae that is already spored, and black algae typically builds up on the walls. It doesn't really get into the water, because black algae is a rooting algae. It actually goes into typically concrete pools, and it burrows. How does this product affect black algae once it's already spored?
Yeah, great question. We can eliminate all types of algae, including black algae. Black algae is going to take the longest to eliminate, and it may take extra mineral at the end. As you mentioned, Derek, if the black algae is deeply rooted into the plaster, what we recommend is using as directed, but having, and also keeping your pH on the lower side, because the lower maybe 7.2, right? The lower the pH, the more active and available the chlorine. And then also continue to brush it, knock the heads off of that black algae, and that's going to help get the minerals and the chlorine inside of it quicker. But it may take up to 4 weeks. With typical algae, any other type of algae, it's a day, 24 hours to a couple days, 2-3 days, depending on how bad it is. With black algae, it takes longer. And if in extreme cases, if it's not completely gone after the 4th week, we may even recommend you to add more mineral to the water with the booster. If in some cases, the mineral does get used up from killing algae, and the harder that those minerals are working, the shorter the lifespan. But on black algae, sometimes it just needs an extra boost of mineral to really get it gone. That one benefit, Derek, is that once it's gone and you continue to use PoolRx, it won't come back. Because like I said earlier, the minerals are in the water everywhere at all times. And so once it's gone, now you have that preventative aspect where that algae can't grow again. So long story short is it will do it. I recommend keeping your chlorine a little higher, your pH a little on the low side, continue to brush it, and have a little bit of patience. 3-4 weeks, it should be gone, no problem. If it's not gone by the 5th week, we give us a call, but we may add a booster to it.
Sure.
So
what people don't know about black algae is they think that you can just get it out of the pool. And you mentioned brushing. And you have to brush black algae. And the reason why is because black algae is one of the only algae that forms that head. It's like a mucus-like layer that is basically protects it from chemicals. Yeah. So it doesn't matter where your chlorine is. There is a mucus head on top of that black algae that is kind of protecting that. And brushing the pool knocks that head off, which then makes the black algae susceptible to the chlorine, the minerals in the water to actually get it out. And black algae is the hardest.
Yeah,
it's the absolute hardest. So it might take 4 to 5 to 6 weeks. I've even had some hard cases of black algae take. But like a product like this, you'll get rid of green algae relatively fast.
Oh yeah.
Now, talking about the different forms of algae, and what most people don't know is there's 700,000 species of algae. But we in the pool industry, we break it up into colors.
Yeah.
Because we want to know colors.
Yeah.
So let's talk about yellow or mustard algae.
Yeah. Again, the typical ones people talk about are yellow algae or mustard algae, green algae, black algae. And really green also kind of covers the blue algae as well. But yellow, green, and black are the generic terms for these algae. And again, people have such a tough time with mustard algae in some climates, in some situations. But this is going to blow your mind if you've never used it and you got historic yellow algae, mustard algae problems in your pool. This will eliminate in a day or so, and it won't let it come back. So all types of algae is what this can kill and prevent. And that is, again, a testament to our unique formulation, the chelation, and also how the mineral acts with the alloy to allow the minerals to last longer. So, yeah, it's all types.
Talk to me about a case, and we had last year, I don't know exactly how this happens, but it's like every 3rd year or something. It's kind of like a locust thing. It doesn't happen every year, but like every 3rd year, we'll get like a bunch of pools that have mustard algae in it, and it's like we're treating mustard algae. When you haven't been using this product here, and you've got a pool that is just full of mustard algae, the bottom, the walls are absolutely coated. Assuming, now I got to nail this for everybody out there watching, assuming that your chemistry is right, adding this to the pool, how long, what's the typical time span of getting rid of mustard algae? Because I hate mustard algae and I want to get rid of it in every pool.
Yeah, and that's, I can't, every pool is different, and, if depending on how excessive it is, it will depend. So I don't, 24 hours in most cases, but, even in a green pool cleanup or a mustard pool cleanup where you're, it's everywhere, 3 days. But again, we do have kind of a green pool cleanup solution, which is pretty basic. It's a little bit different than our basic solution, which we're saying if your pool is green or has mustard everywhere, we recommend cleaning the filter, brush and vac the pool, put the PoolRx into the pump basket, try to get enough chlorine to hypothetically get you to between 2 to 5 parts per million of free chlorine in the water. So you're adding enough to get there. Run your pump for 24 hours. Come back, brush and vac the pool, get your chlorine back up, run the pump for 24 hours. And by the third day, you're usually in a great place. If in really extreme situations, it may be a fourth day. In other situations, it may be 1 day. So I can't give you a typical. It's going to vary, and so I wouldn't want to. Expectation on this is that if you use it as directed, it works as advertised. This is a good point to bring up. Our minerals are going to last typically 6 months in the water. The minerals do get used up from killing algae, backwashing, splash out, filter cleans, dilution. The minerals get used up. They get used up, filtered out, or lost. So in a green pool that's a swamp, you can clear up a pool with PoolRx, but keep in mind that some of that mineral gets used up by clearing up the pool. So you may not get 6 months out of it. So you may have to add a booster prior to the 6 month period. And you'll know you need to add that booster based on a few factors, because you can't test for it. Like I told you earlier, the first thing you'll notice is the chlorine demand is going to start going back up because the mineral's been used up and that microalgae is able to grow again. The second thing would be cloudy water. The third thing would be any hint of algae coming back. At that point, hey, it's been 4 months. I said, I cleared up my green pool with PoolRx. It's been 4 months. I'm seeing algae come back. What the hell? I thought it was supposed to be a 6 month product. Well, we got you cleared up, remember? So we used some of that mineral to get you cleared up. And now all you do is add a booster. And all you do is open up the canister and pour it right into the skimmer or the pump basket. These minerals, and turn your pump on. These minerals dissolve into solution. And that raises the mineral content. And then as that water passes over the original unit, it rejuvenates the minerals to last another 6 months. And then one last note is that this does only last 1 year in the water to rejuvenate minerals. So every year it's a new unit, and if necessary, you add the booster.
So for those of you watching on video, I've magically got a hat on because you just saw a jump cut there. Going back into what you were just talking about is the pool needs to be circulated properly. You need to make sure that the chemistry is right, and using your product, the PoolRx product, will help in problem pools as well as pools that don't have a problem.
Right.
And you wanted to hit on salt pools.
Yeah. And again, normal pool chemistry is a standard expectation, right? And that's what you as an educator and a pool store owner and a service owner, basic pool chemistry and maintenance is kind of the standard of what everybody is trying to do. And PoolRx has a wide range for error. And that's why it's so easy to use and such a well-received and product by the masses, even the do-it-yourself folks, because there's such a wide range for error. But yeah, we would like to have balanced water, normal pump run times where you're turning your water over at least 1.5 times per day, in normal pool chemistry. And with those and PoolRx, you're pretty much smooth sailing. So to your point on salt pools, I do want to hit on this. PoolRx is ideal for salt pools. One, because again, like I said earlier, the minerals are uniquely chelated, so they're very safe in a high pH environment. That's number one. Number two is because our minerals are freeing up chlorine to be more available, they're eliminating the algae, preventing the algae from growing. Now you're able to turn down your salt generator typically by about 50% of its previous setting. And that's because that chlorine is now much more active and available. The third thing would be there's some zinc in our product, and the zinc in our product prevents the scale from attaching to the salt cell as easily. We don't sell this product as a descaling product. However, the reality is in the field and in the reality of the chemistry is that zinc prevents the scale from attaching. So you're not going to have to clean your salt cell as frequently. So less generation of the salt cell and less cleaning of it is going to prolong the life of that equipment. And so that's going to be a benefit to you as a homeowner or even a service professional, is that salt system is going to last longer. The one note on salt systems is there has been some research and some theoretical thought that phosphates can interfere with the electrolysis of a salt cell, meaning that high phosphates interfere with the electrolysis, which does not allow your salt chlorine generator to produce as efficiently as it would with low phosphates. So in a salt chlorine environment, a salt chlorine pool, reducing phosphates, I get that. It makes sense. You're reducing the phosphates. It's going to help your salt chlorine generator run more efficiently. And so I do see the reason for reducing phosphates in a salt pool. Now keep in mind, if you don't want to, or you're really pinching pennies, and you don't want to do that, again, like I told you earlier, we are reducing, you're going to be able to, your salt generator is going to produce enough with PoolRx in the water because typically we're able to turn down the cell in the first place. So it's kind of a give or take, but if you really want to, be as efficient as possible, there is some research out there that suggests that phosphates interfere with that electrolysis, so reducing the efficiency. So I always want to give a plug to the phosphate reason, because most of my time is explaining how phosphates are just food for algae, and they don't consume chlorine. The misnomer is that high phosphates are consuming your chlorine in the water, and that's why you can't keep chlorine in the water, because the phosphates are high. And that, again, is not the case. The phosphates are feeding the algae. The algae is what's consuming your chlorine. So with PoolRx, again, if there's no algae in the water, it does not matter how high your phosphates get. So you just don't have to treat with that. So, but to plug phosphate removers in a salt pool, I get it.
Yeah. So manufacturers of salt cells talk about phosphates on a regular basis. In fact, I'm a warranty center for all of the manufacturers. Well, let me say this. I'm a warranty center for all of the big reputable manufacturers of pool equipment. And they all have somewhere in there where you need to keep your phosphates under a certain level because of what you just said. It interferes with how, now I have no idea what the science behind that is. I am going to be interviewing one of those people, and hopefully I can ask them about that. For those systems, PoolRx will work fine. You just got to keep your phosphates under.
Well, yeah. Again, you don't have to reduce phosphates with PoolRx. Okay, we're going to keep you algae free, and we're going to free up your chlorine, and so you don't need to reduce phosphates with PoolRx in any application. But what I'm saying with a salt system is the reason why you would reduce phosphates is to allow your salt system to run more efficiently, meaning produce as much chlorine as it can, as it's meant to produce. But again, keep in mind, with PoolRx, you're able to turn down how much chlorine is needed in the pool in the first place. So no, we don't need to with our product, but I'm just talking salt systems in general. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's I'm more talking about them than I am about PoolRx. So
right.
Yeah.
Your product doesn't need it because it kills the algae. And what you were saying is, phosphates don't reduce the chlorine, but it is a chain reaction that does. So phosphates are in the water. It's food for algae. Mm-hmm. The algae feed on the phosphate. So the algae blooms just like a flower would bloom, and that's what you need the chlorine for. That's what you would need the PoolRx for. It's not the phosphates, it is the result of the phosphates. And that's why people that don't use a product like PoolRx is because they have to reduce the
Right.
phosphates to reduce the
Right.
food, and that kind of prevents the need for raising their chlorine up.
Yep.
Because it is a food. But outside of that and salt systems, phosphates are not really a huge issue unless you're starting to get an algae bloom.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of it's an either or thing with us. We're preventing the algae, so we're not concerned at all about the food and the water. There's no one there to eat it. So it's really an easier approach, more cost effective, and you're going to lose the phosphate battle. They're coming in from all sorts of places, including your source water. So it's a never-ending battle there. So what we believe that, hey, let's prevent it from the first place, so we don't have to worry about how much food's feeding it.
That's what I get all the time at my retail store counter. People will ask me, well, where is this phosphate coming from? And they'll have 2,000 to 3,000 parts in their water, and they're like, where is it coming from? I'm not adding it. Well, you kind of are, because cities, to prevent the Flint, Michigan thing, they're adding phosphates to your tap water to prevent, and again, I don't know the science behind it, but prevent the stuff inside your water pipes, or the water pipes that are feeding your house, from building up, so you don't have a Flint, Michigan thing. Right. Let's just get off track so people don't think we're just talking about chemistry. Like, I ask everybody this, and I'm going to ask you, if you would be a superhero, who would you be and why?
This might sound corny, but my wife is my favorite superhero, and I know that, and I'm going to give you another answer, but
oh my God,
she
you want to be your wife?
No, I just look up. She's fifth grade teacher, works full time, takes care of our two kids when I'm not home, which I travel quite a bit. And when I am home, she's taking care of all of us. So she's my number one. But
teachers are kind of like superheroes.
They really are. They really are.
They teach our youth mostly for way less money than they should be making.
Yeah, yeah. My other one that come to mind would be Superman, of course, because Clark Kent is kind of this unassuming guy. But then, and it reminds me of our product, right? It's this unassuming little product that you're like, this thing is going to do everything you told me. Are you kidding me? And then you put it in the water and you use it as directed, and you're amazed. It's kind of the Clark Kent Superman thing where you're not really impressed, then all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, thank goodness. On a personal note, it would be Captain America. Captain America is, the soldier that is everything that America stands for. Trustworthy, honest, and the original patriot. So I'm definitely looking up to that one, or trying to be like that guy.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's your background? How did you get into this crazy industry that we have?
Man, that's a long story. In a nutshell, so I was in other businesses prior to this. I'll try to keep it short. So I was fortunate. I was friends with a mutual friend and the owner of our company, Derek Nelmapius, I was introduced to. And we kind of became friends, and I was in between opportunities, and I was looking for something. And he's like, come check it out. So I actually went to the International Pool and Spa Show in Vegas one year. He's like, I'm looking for someone to help build our business, build our brand, support the customer, grow interest in the product, educate people, teach people. And those are all the things that I'd done in previous businesses. But met Derek, and he's like, come check this out, And so I did some research, did the shows, and did some research on the product, and I realized that what this product was doing for folks, and this was 10 years ago, and the feedback I was getting was, man, this is a gem here, and it's helping me. And so for me to feel like, hey, we got this great product, and it's not only a great product, but it's helping other people to simplify their pool maintenance and to make them more profitable as a retailer or as a service professional, and it's benefiting both the service pro and the homeowner. I was like, sign me up. because when it comes down to it, you want to feel good about what you're doing every day. And if you're able to teach about something that can help other people, it really is satisfying and gratifying, and I'm really happy to be part of it. I love hearing the feedback we get about PoolRx. It's really it's cool. You're really getting people to call you up and say, hey man, I believed what you said. I tried it at my toughest pool, and this year I put it in every pool, and I'm more profitable this year. I'm using, my customers are happier. I'm using less chemicals, and everything's good. And they actually go out of their way to tell you that. I go to these shows. This is like my 6th show, and guys are coming up to me and like going, man, thank you, man. This is the best thing I've ever had, and my business is better. Everyone's happier, and it's just a cool thing. So, yeah, I'm happy to be a part of it, and I got into it almost 10 years ago just from a mutual friend's, telling me to come talk to Derek, and then Derek's, been good enough to trust me to run with it. So that's it.
So jumping back into the product, I wanted to kind of get off the chemistry for a second to let people know that you're a real human being.
Yeah, yeah, no, I am. Again, I feel like a teacher, an educator, kind of a coach, and I enjoy it. It's not. I'm not really selling anything here. It's really just an education of what you can achieve and what you can do with a cool product like this. So, feels good.
When you have this one of these, what do you call these? What is this called?
This is called a PoolRx unit. This is the blue unit, and that's the black unit.
Basket or anything.
No.
So when you put one of these units in a pool, just leave it there for forever, and you don't do anything with it?
Nope. So the alloy cylinder is effective for 1 year in the water to rejuvenate minerals. There's enough mineral in here to last up to 6 months. Mm-hmm. So this handles 7,500 to 20,000. This is 20 to 30,000. And really you could put this into as low as 15,000 gallons and you'd be fine. The reason why we have different sizes is you don't want to put this into under 15,000 gallons. The mineral won't have room to dissolve into the water. The alloy cylinder is really part of the science of this, and that's going to help it rejuvenate and last longer. So every year it's a new unit, and if you need to at the end of the season, you can use the booster. And what you have here that this is also we have spa units as well, or fountains. The yellow size handles 100 to 400 gallons, and the black is 400 to 1,000. With spas, you don't, with our product, you don't want to use bromine. So you'd start with fresh water and a clean filter. And we only really need about a tablespoon of dichlorogranular once a week, maybe a little potassium monopersulfate, some non-chlorine shock, once in a while after you get out of the tub. But it does what it's supposed to do. It acts as advertised.
For those of you that are just listening to this on maybe iTunes or whatnot, and if you are listening on iTunes, give us a 5-star. That'd be great, or thumbs up. Recommend it to a friend. But what we're looking at is the smaller units, and we actually have these if you're watching on video. These are called the PoolRx Spa units.
Yep.
And these are good for 100 to 400 gallons. The black one is good for 400 gallons to 1,000 gallons. So I think that these units, and now granted, I only service larger pools, but I think, because I get a lot of people that come into my retail store and they'll have these pools that they bought that are real inexpensive, but what a lot of people don't know is the pools were designed to have very poor circulation so that the people that sell these particular pools can sell more chemicals. So the pools that I'm talking about, and again, I'm not going to mention any brand names, but they don't have skimmers. And a lot of times they don't have a actual real pool pump. They've got this pump filter combo thing with no what we call on a bigger pump a pump basket or a volute. I think one of these would be absolutely great on that. But the question is, without
put
having a skimmer, without having,
Yeah.
where do you put it?
Right. And so, with those above ground, pools that you're talking about typically is if there's a filter, there should be at least a filter on it. You can actually wedge this in the filter pleats. Don't put this in what they call the sand tube inside the filter. It'll get sucked into the plumbing. You don't want that. Put this wedge it in the filter pleats and then put your filter back in. So anywhere this can go where it gets flow is really what we're looking for, because there is the reaction with the minerals in the water and the alloy that you want it to flow over it. So in really small applications like that, then just put it in the filter pleats. You'll be fine.
Do you have multiple sizes of the booster?
No, we don't. So the booster is 8 ounces of mineral, the same amount that's in the blue unit, and I would consider that 7,500 to 20,000 gallons. As a general rule, if you want to put it as 15,000 gallons, you're fine. If you have a pool that's really maxing out at 30,000 gallons, you may need 2 boosters. Okay, you use the black unit, and if you notice, that your water is getting cloudy or you see any hint of algae come back, I would start with 1 booster, but have an extra one on hand just in case. The sizing, there is a chemistry that we have to have the right amount based on the gallons. So I would say, for a booster, blue unit, one booster, and for a black unit, I would start with 1 booster, but I would have a second one just in case.
So for the black unit for spas up to 1,000 gallons, how do you dose the booster?
Yeah, there is no booster for the spas. Good question. These are relatively inexpensive. So every time you drain and refill your spa, you're going with a new unit. We don't have a booster for the spa units. So
Okay.
the booster is only intended for pools.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. So, and really, I would start with, if your pool is typically, the 8 foot by 8 foot square, is 5 or 6 people, it's probably 450 gallons, very common number. You could start with the yellow unit. It says it maxes at 400 gallons, but you probably get away with the yellow one for that size. The 1,000 gallon, one is really, there's not as many of those spas out there.
But you can't use bromine with this.
Yeah, no bromine, no biguanide, so none of the Aquasil products. Bromine, you're going to, the water's not going to look good. It might be a little yellow tinge. It's not dangerous, but it's just not intended for that. It just doesn't react well with that. So no bromine, no biguanides, and the whole bromine thing. You're using so little chlorine in the first place with PoolRx that you're not going to smell it or feel it, and so it's a real less is more approach. But fresh water, clean filter, and the spa unit, and some little chlorine.
Cool. What are some of the biggest myths that you hear about in the pool industry that are just wrong info?
That's a good question. I know we already touched on it, but the cyanuric issue is an issue, and it needs to be addressed, and people need to be educated on it. So that's. I'm not sure if it's a myth. It's not a myth at all. It's definitely the cyanuric acid conditioner, high conditioner levels is definitely an issue. But as far as myths go, that I'd like to set the record straight. I can tell you, the myth of our product is that it's not gonna, that it's not safe, or it's gonna stain your pool, or any of that nonsense, and it's just not the case. There's a lot of big chemical companies that aren't real happy with PoolRx because we are a less is more approach. And so, again, we're EPA registered, which goes through a stringent testing for all the claims and also all the safety for the product and the environment that you have to abide by. So the myth, the haters of PoolRx are the chemical companies, and they sometimes try to spread myths on our product. That's just the way of the world, unfortunately. But yeah, ours is EPA registered, safe to use, and uniquely chelated, so it's not going to have any issues. But those are the myths about our product that I would like to dispel. But as far as the pool industry, there's lots of opinions and lots of information out there. But if you can simplify it and just use things as advertised, you're going to be pretty much in a good place.
Here's one getting into the. So you've actually ran a route. So it's not just you got into this industry and just done what I've seen a lot of reps do. They just kind of get in the industry, they learn about their specific product, and then they just go out there and just start peddling the product without actually knowing what's going on in the field. And there is some scientists that again that are just doing that. They're just doing controlled lab experiments, and it works great in the lab, but it doesn't really work in the real world. So you've actually ran a route. So what I'm trying to tell everybody is Fred knows what he's talking about. So here's my question. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see pool guys and or homeowners, you can, wherever you want to go with that, making with their backyard pool?
Tabs in the skimmer.
Oh, it's a good one.
Not dissolving cal hypo before they pour it in the pool, just dumping in the granular in the shallow end, and then they see all this black dots. It's where the cal hypo oxidized on the surface. Pouring cal hypo into a skimmer, shocking in a skimmer. I mean, those are just it's going to tear up, it's going to tear up your plumbing, and it's going to tear up your heater and all those things that it passes through. So those are those are unfortunately common, and those are big ones. I would, don't do that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned tabs in the skimmer. In my area, I would say 80 to 90% of people put tabs in the skimmer, and they come into my retail store and I'll tell them, hey, you need to buy a
floater or an
inline feeder, something, and they'll be like, you just want to take my money. Well, no, it isn't that. It's putting tabs in the skimmer, it has a consequence.
The tabs are a 2.8 on the pH scale. Okay, and that low pH is highly acidic, and it basically can tear up. It can really damage plumbing and equipment. So that's a problem. And so when someone comes to you like yourself and tells them, hey, you need an inline feeder or a floater, you're actually doing them a benefit. So they're going to prolong the life of their equipment. So that's a pretty common one, and then the dichlor, not dichlor, but cal hypo. Again, if you're using PoolRx, we're making chlorine super active and available, and on our directions it does say dissolve and dilute the cal hypo shock before pouring in the pool, and that's good to do even without using our product. Cal hypo is highly available chlorine, and if you don't, in some cases, depending on your chemistry. We're making that cal hypo so active that when you just pour in a granular bag of 1 pound cal hypo and it settles to the bottom, you may see it oxidize instantly. It'll go in a couple weeks, and it can even be taken care of, quicker than that. But to avoid that, on just about every bag of cal hypo, it says, dissolve, dilute before pouring in the pool. So take the extra step, get a 5-gallon bucket of water, pour it in, stir it up, and just pour it over the deep end of the pool, and you'll be fine. The cal hypo and then the tabs and the skimmer are the two no-nos. Other than that, people seem to like to, I think, cleaning your filter excessively. I think filters run a little better with a little bit of pressure. You're going to filter a little bit better with some pressure in the filter. So I think excessive cleaning of filters and excessive backwashing is unnecessary. And I think you're gonna
what would you say is excessive, and kind of go over the different filter types?
I actually don't even want to put a number to it because
I will.
That's fine. I don't I'd rather stay in my lane a little bit when it comes to that, but I wouldn't want to put a number to it because I just think in general. It depends on the kind of person you are. Some folks are just meticulous and they think more of everything's better, and they over chlorinate and they overdo everything, and then some folks are like, I don't want to deal with this. I'll look at this thing in a month or two and see how it looks. So there's a wide range of people out there. But what's your take on the filter cleaning?
For now, I'm going to say this, for a clear pool that is running normally. I'm not talking about people that are starting up or having a bad algae bloom or something like that. But for a clear pool, a sand filter needs to be backwashed every single week during the summertime and about every other week during the winter time. Backwashing more than that does not help a sand filter unless you have a really bad kind of startup where you have a bunch of leaves in the pool, and then you just kind of have to watch the pressure. Cartridge filter, again, a clean pool. You can kind of watch the pressure, and in certain markets, people put what I think is just really small cartridge filters on their pool, like the Florida market. They put filters that are really, really small, and those filters, you have to watch them. Those filters have to be cleaned on a monthly basis, just because you got a 15,000 to 25,000 gallon pool, and you've got this filter that caps out at that gallonage, so you have to filter that more often. But in my area, some of the builders, well, most all of the builders put the proper sized cartridge filters on there, and those you can go between 6 and 8 months before cleaning them. On my personal pool, right now I have one of those cheaper above ground pools that I was talking about that you buy from one of the big box stores for $500, but I have a 420 square foot cartridge filter on my pool. So I don't have to clean it, but about every year. Now, granted, I've got a $500 pool. I've got $2,000 worth of pump filter, and I have an inline chlorine feeder on my pool. For those of you that have watched my YouTube channel, the Aquanut Pool Care channel, which is different than this channel, you've seen my setup. And I also have a $2,000 robot in that pool too. So I have a $500 pool with about $4,000 worth of equipment on it. But for the average in-ground pool, when the filter is sized properly, about every 6 months is what you want to do. And if you have a smaller filter, you really need to clean it more often. Now, on a DE filter, there is some people say that you can go 6 months without cleaning a DE filter. I don't care what size pool that you have. A DE filter filters out down to 3 to 5 microns. So with it filtering down to that small, you need to backwash more often. And there's two different methods of backwashing a DE filter. I'm not really going to go into those. So on a DE filter, you really can't really go 3 months without backwashing. So if you do the light backwash, you can do that on a every other week basis. If you do the full backwash, then you can go a month. Definitely not 3 months. I don't care what anybody tells you. And about every 6 months, you need to completely break that filter down and clean it out and totally recharge it, because no matter how much you backwash that filter, if you just sit there and backwash it, you're not going to get all of that DE out and all of the dirt that kind of builds up on the grids. Right. So I know that's kind of off topic, but filtration, circulation is key for your product or any other product.
Just any pool, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Any pool, it has to happen. So what people can come into my store and buy your product because I use PoolRx. I sell PoolRx, and I am not opposed to it at all, because hell, I use the damn product, right? It works, and it helps me out, and it helps my customers out. And like I said, you say it works on every pool, and I agree with that. but I especially like it on problem pools
Sure.
that have not been designed properly.
Right.
And unfortunately, there are a lot in my area now. I don't know about other areas of the country that just have not been designed properly for the perfect flow.
Yeah, and that's the point is, the preventative maintenance side of this product is really, you know, this is the day and age where people are trying to be healthier. The big trend is going to be health, and from not only your food to your water to all aspects of health, but that also includes your pool. And as a preventative maintenance product, PoolRx is going to shine for you. You might as well you put it in before you have problems, and you're also you're able to swim in a healthier pool. So it's an exciting thing to share it and also to hear all the great testimonial from you about the problem pools. It absolutely will shine there as well. But I urge everyone to consider this even as a preventative maintenance product. So, and again, if you're listening to this and you have larger bodies of water, we can support that. We also have a commercial unit that's much larger, and we have a 10-pound bucket of the mineral. So we've supported anything from a 100-gallon fountain or spa up to million-gallon water parks. So we can support any size body of water, and great as a preventative maintenance product for all parts of the country and for the world, of that matter.
Now, most people watching this are going to be homeowners, people that have backyard pools. So, but just for my knowledge and the pool pros that are watching / listening to this, can you touch on the commercial? Just for like, I don't know, two or 3 minutes, because you didn't bring one of those.
No, we did not. But yeah, the commercial, it's really, again, all about sizing the product properly. So each commercial pump room is going to be a little bit different. I mean, you have, say, a 150,000 gallon commercial pool, and some pump rooms are going to have maybe 3 2 horsepower pumps in line, or some of them are going to have a big 7 or 10 horsepower single pump. And so depending on what your pump room looks like will depend on how you need to size the product. For example, say it has 3 pumps, smaller, 2 or 3 horsepower pumps in line, you would put in 1 black unit in each pump. Consider this 25,000 gallons worth of water. So 3 times 25,000 is 75,000 gallons worth of mineral in the water, and you have enough alloy cylinder in there to rejuvenate the minerals. Well, the pool is 150,000 gallons, so you only have 75,000 gallons worth of mineral in that pool based on the black units. So you'd have to add additional 75,000 gallons worth of mineral. And you can do that either with
it's the booster, right?
Yeah, the booster. Or you can buy the bucket. The 10-pound bucket supports 300,000 gallons. It has 4 2.5-pound bags, and each 2.5-pound bag supports 75,000 gallons worth of water. So, you would basically, if you bought the bucket, you'd have 3 units, 75,000, and a bucket, and you just use one of those bags, another 75,000, that gets you to 150,000 gallons. And so you have enough alloy in there to rejuvenate the minerals, and you have enough minerals to do the job. And so again, that's just one application. I would, if you had one large, 7 horse or 10 horsepower pump, we do have the larger commercial unit. It's just the alloy cylinder only. There's no minerals packed inside the commercial unit. And then you put that in the pump basket, and then you would dose the pool accordingly based on the gallons. So in that case, you would get 2 of those bags, and that gets you to 150,000 gallons. So again, with commercial applications, you just kind of make do with what you have based on these different pump rooms and how they were designed and who built them and all those things. But when it comes down to it, it's all about having the right amount of mineral based on the gallons of the pool and enough of the alloy in there to rejuvenate those minerals. And if you do that, it works as advertised. So that's about as simple as I can make it in this setting. If you have questions, if you have questions about that and commercial applications or any other questions, really, you can check us at PoolRx.com on our website. If you're a pool professional, we have a pool professional section that you would log into, and we would send you a password for the pool professional section that gives you some more access to more information. If you're a homeowner, a do-it-yourselfer, you can just log into our website. If you have questions, you could email us. But everything is pretty well explained on the website. So easy to access us. We're really here to educate and help folks get through it and understand it. It's so easy to use. We are highly reviewed on all the different online sites, which is, we have over 1,000 reviews just on the Blue unit on a very prominent site, and it just speaks to the ease of use of the product. And so it's really, we went through a lot of detail today. We talked about a lot of the uniqueness about it, but as far as the simplicity, you guys, it's pick the right size, what you got, and clean your filter and drop it in the pump basket and run your pump after you put it in, and that's it.
This has been a really fun interview, Fred. You've actually answered a lot of questions before I asked them, which you just answered a question I was going to.
Not my first rodeo here,
not
bud.
your first rodeo.
No.
So let's touch on this as we're wrapping up. What are you've already answered so many questions before I asked. What have we not touched on that you feel we should?
Man, we covered a lot in this segment. Again, just the ease of use, and I also, we've kind of covered it all, man. I'm not sure what else we could cover. If there's more questions or you have other questions, please reach out to us. That's all I can say. We are definitely here to help you. We have a great frequently asked questions section on our website that's open to anybody. There's about 28 of the most frequently asked questions that I would also recommend if you have other stuff that we didn't hit here, which I think we hit it all.
There's one that we haven't hit on.
What's that?
Where does somebody, we've talked about, the product PoolRx and all of the benefits of it, and different chemistry, and we hit on the very important topic of you still have to have your water balanced. This is not a magic wand where you put this in and you can just walk off and never worry about your pool again. It definitely helps. It's definitely a great product. So now,
where to buy it?
Where to buy it? Exactly. Where do people get this? Either one of these cartridges.
So anywhere you buy your pool products, this is available. We sell through distribution. Distribution sells it to pool stores like Derek's. They also sell to online aspects, but you can also buy it from your service professional. So if you have a service guy that does your pool once a week, you can buy it through him. So it's really available everywhere that you would find pool products and wherever you're comfortable purchasing. So that's the good news. We are distributed in a variety of places, and you should be able to find us. And if you don't have us at your local store, have them give us a call, and we can make sure that we get them out there.
I mean, if they don't have them in their local store, just a plug, they can call me.
There you go.
I will sell PoolRx to anybody who wants it, but I don't want to get other store owners mad at me. If they want to sell it, that'd be fine too. So
yep, and it benefits everybody. So it's easy to do.
Yeah,
and it works great in your perfect pools as well. So.
And fountains, so don't think that this is just a pool product. You can put this in fountains as long as you don't use a biguanide
or bromine. And don't use it with fish. Don't use it in your koi ponds. Fish don't react the same to minerals and chlorine as people do, or dogs and pets, any mammals. Safe for your dogs, safe for pets, safe for everybody except fish. So. You're good there.
With a fountain that has a lot of brass fittings, just gonna, take the brass that's in there and chelate it also?
No. We keep to our own. So our minerals are just preventing the algae, freeing up the chlorine. That's what we do. So we're not gonna affect the brass, but you typically aren't gonna be using much chlorine with a lot of brass. Yeah, I would use it. Just use it as directed, and you'll be good to go.
Well, Fred, thanks for doing this podcast with me. Thanks for helping answer all of the questions, and hopefully people listening to this after they listen or watch this, and please hit the thumbs up if you're watching on a video. Leave a comment wherever you feel like you can leave a comment. Give us, reviews and let us know what you think about it. And if you do have any questions, which I'm not sure what questions they would have at
Yeah, we
this
covered
point,
a lot.
let us know.
Yep. Thank
Thanks.
you, Derek. Appreciate it.